She used to be the star on the runway, the perfect body, the perfect walk, the perfect beauty, until tragedy struck, and what used to be a perfect life was taken from her. She lost everything and everyone, including herself. But would she stay down like everyone thinks? This is Ada's story, and trust me, you've not heard anything like this. Hey, besties. We are back again with another emotional and heartwarming story. But before I tell you about how Ada's story went, smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Also tell me, do you want an ebook version of this story, where we share more details about our stories? You know, the private details we don't get to share here. Then click the link in the description below and join the waitlist. Okay, let's move back into the story. Before the grief, before the silence. Before she learned that the world doesn't pause for pain, there was Adaze Okonkwo. She was not the kind of beautiful that politely asked for your attention. She was the kind that took it, from across a room, from the back of a runway, from a photograph that hadn't even been edited yet. Her skin was a deep, luminous brown that photographers fought to capture correctly, and her bone structure was the sort that made senior stylists put down their phones mid-scroll and stare. She was 24 years old, Nigerian-born, Lagos-raised, and she'd been told since she was 10 years old that she was going to be somebody. She believed it. More importantly, she earned it. The auditorium of the Maison Elite Modeling Academy Lagos was full to the ceiling with pride. Wealthy parents sat in exquisite outfits, sitting at one of the most luxurious auditorium, necks craning toward the stage. It was graduation night. The girls who had survived 2 grueling years of posture drills, runway walks, portfolio shoots, and the kind of psychological pressure that most people reserved for medical school were finally stepping into the light. Adaze's father, Chief Emeka Okonkwo, sat in the front row. He was a broad, distinguished man with a salt and pepper beard and the quiet authority of someone who had built his wealth from nothing and kept it from everything. He was not the type to cry in public. He cried that night. When Adaze stepped onto that stage in her final walk, slow, deliberate, chin lifted, shoulders back, and every inch of her commanding the room, the entire auditorium fell into that particular silence that only happened when something extraordinary was occurring. Then it erupted. Her mother, Ngozi Okonkwo, was already on her feet, phone in the air, recording and crying simultaneously, her luxurious wrapper askew, her jewel tilting dangerously to one side. She didn't care. "That is my daughter," she whispered to the stranger beside her, grabbing the woman's arm. "That is my Ada." Adaze walked back behind the curtain and pressed her back against the cool wall, and breathed. She had done it. She was graduating at the top of her class. She had secured a placement, a rare, highly competitive placement, at Maison Isul, the most prestigious modeling house in New York, owned by Madame Isul Bayek, the South Korean icon who had spent 30 years shaping the faces that shaped magazines. She was going to New York. Her dream of being an established model is finally coming to pass. Maison Isul was not just a modeling agency. It was a religion. The building itself was a statement, a sleek tower of smoked glass and white marble in the heart of Midtown, its lobby lined with framed covers of every major fashion magazine on earth. The girls who walked through those doors didn't just model clothes, they became the visual language of an era. Madame Isul Bayek had an eye that could not be taught, could not be bought, and could not be argued with. Adaze arrived with 2 suitcases and a confidence that the New York cold immediately tried to strip from her. It didn't succeed. She found her footing faster than anyone expected. Within 6 weeks, she had walked 3 shows. Within 3 months, she was being requested by name. Within a year, she was the girl, the one the photographers asked for first, the one the designers fitted their samples on, the one that every other model in the house quietly studied when they thought no one was watching. They were always watching. Especially Sloane. Sloane Mercer was beautiful in the way that a blade was beautiful. Precise, symmetrical, cold to the touch. She was 23, American, blonde, with pale blue eyes that had a way of smiling even when her mouth didn't. She had been at Maison Isul for 3 years before Adaze arrived, and she had been the top girl for 2 of those years. She understood the house, its rhythms, its politics. She understood Madame Isul's tastes and Madame Isul's blind spots. She understood exactly how to position herself. What she had not anticipated was Adaze. Adaze, who walked in from Lagos with raw talent so undeniable it made Sloane's careful, calculated work look rehearsed by comparison. Adaze, who made clients forget what they were asking for. Adaze, who didn't even seem to know how good she was, which was somehow the most infuriating part. So Sloane did what she had always done when she encountered a threat. She made herself indispensable to it. "Ada, you need someone who knows this place," Sloane had said early on, sliding into the seat beside her in the dressing room with a warm smile and an iced coffee. "Let me show you the ropes." Adaz had looked at her, genuinely, openly, the way people who have been raised with real love look at strangers, Adaz with something close to trust already offered, and smiled back. "I'd like that," she said. It was the most expensive thing she ever said for free. What Adaz didn't know was this. At 9:04, on the morning of the Tuesday rehearsal where Adaz had been 4 minutes late, Sloane had been the one to text a report. "She's running late, I checked." It was sent to Vivian Cross. Vivian had read it and smiled. If Sloane was the blade, Vivian Cross was the hand that held it. Vivian was the senior floor manager of Maison Isoul, which, in practical terms, meant she controlled the schedule. She decided who practiced when, who got the main stage, who got the side rehearsal room with the flickering light, and who got quietly erased from the running order for showing up 4 minutes late. Vivian was 41 years old, angular, efficient, and deeply, personally offended by Adazi's existence. She had never said this out loud. She didn't need to. It lived in the half-second pause before she called Adazi's name, in the way she checked her watch with theatrical precision whenever Adazi arrived, in the sighs she exhaled like they were press releases. Madame Isoul was not the problem. Madame Isoul saw exactly what Adaz was. The problem, and Vivian understood this, was that Madame Isoul was not always in the building. Adaz pushed through the studio door 4 minutes late, slightly breathless, still pulling her hair back. She'd been on the phone with her mother for 20 minutes. Ngozi had called to ask about the weather in New York, then to discuss a cousin's wedding, then to say that her father had watched Adazi's last campaign video 17 times and had shown it to every person at his club. She was smiling when she walked in. That was her first mistake, according to Vivian. 9:04, Vivian said, without looking up from her clipboard. "I know, I'm so sorry. Main stage slot, reassigned." Adaz stopped. "I'm 4 minutes late. This is a professional house, Adaz, not a secondary school. The main slot goes to the model who is ready when the music starts." Vivian gestured with her pen. Sloane, already stretched at the bar, unfolded herself and walked to the center of the stage with the calm of someone who had been expecting this call. She did look back at Adaz briefly. Her expression was exactly the right mixture of apologetic and helpless. "Sorry, eat Ada," she said softly, and stepped into the light. Later, in the bathroom, Sloane found Adaz at the sink, jaw tight, eyes dry with the particular discipline of someone who had decided not to cry yet. "Viv is so harsh with you," Sloane said, touching her arm. "It's not fair. I want you to know that I see it." Adaz looked at her in the mirror. "Thanks," she said, and she meant it, because she didn't know yet. It came on a Wednesday evening, just after 9. Adaz was in her apartment, fresh from a fitting, checking on the jollof rice she had spent over 30 minutes preparing, because it was the only thing that still felt like home. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it without urgency, probably her mother calling again about the cousin's wedding, and then she saw the number. Her aunt, her mother's older sister. Her stomach moved before her mind did. Her aunt never called. She picked up. She does not remember the exact words her aunt used. She has tried afterward many times to reconstruct them. They come back in pieces: accident, Banana Island, the car. They didn't. And then nothing. Just the sound of the rice slowly burning on the stove, and herself standing in the kitchen, not moving. Her parents. The car. The road from Lagos Island after a late dinner. A truck that came from the wrong direction. The kind of thing that happens in a second and undoes everything that took a lifetime. Chief Emeka Okonkwo and Ngozi Okonkwo. Gone. The parents who sat in every front row, who cried, who said, "That is my Ada." Gone. Sad. It's usually sad when you lose a loved one. You can only imagine losing two, like Adaz did. Tell me, do you think she would ever recover from this loss? What do you think this loss would do to her? Comment your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell, because this channel is known for emotional stories like this. Tell us also where you're watching from. We love to see all your comments. Now let us go back to the story. Madame Issoul gave her emergency leave without being asked. That, at least, was grace. Adaz flew to Lagos the next morning. She sat in the window seat pressed against the glass and watched New York shrink and disappear. And she thought about the last time she'd spoken to her father. He'd told her he was proud of her. He said it every time. She had said, "I know, Daddy. The way you say things you believe will always be available to you." She had not known. The flight was 14 hours. She cried for 9 of them. Lagos received her with the particular intensity it reserved for everything. Loud, warm, overwhelming, too much and not enough all at once. Her parents' house in Banana Island was full of people. Extended family she barely recognized, her father's business associates, her mother's church friends. People who had opinions about grief, about arrangements, about what Adaz should do next. The house that had always smelled like her mother's perfume and her father's cigars now smelled like other people. She moved through it like a ghost. The funeral preparations took 3 weeks. The burial took a day. But it was the aftermath, the settling of things, the meetings with lawyers, the quiet, devastating process of closing a life that kept her. 2 months. She stayed. She ate more from depression. She barely slept. She moved between the house and the cemetery and the lawyer's office and back again, and she let herself be still for the first time in 2 years. The stillness was unbearable. It wasn't until she was boarding her return flight, passport in hand, that she looked down at herself, really looked, and understood that her body had been keeping score. She had always been a size 6. That was her number, her identity, the thing her measurements were built around. Standing at the gate at Murtala Muhammad Airport, she understood that she was no longer a size 6. 2 months of grief, 2 months of barely moving. She was a size 8. In the modeling world, this was not a small thing. She told herself it didn't matter. She would work it off. She would get back. She told herself a lot of things on that flight back to New York. She knew something was different the moment she walked into Maison Issoul. It was not dramatic. That was the thing about real cruelty. It rarely announced itself. It arrived in textures. The way a room shifted when she entered. The way eyes moved over her and then away. The way Vivian Cross looked up from her clipboard, took a 2-second inventory of Adaz from head to foot, and allowed the corner of her mouth to move in a way that wasn't quite a smile. The way Sloane, standing with her new cluster of girls across the room, glanced over and then leaned to whisper something to the girl beside her. The girl laughed. Adaz stood in the doorway of the house she had built 2 years of her life in and understood, in her bones before she understood it anywhere else, or that she had been replaced. It started slowly, and then all at once. Vivian, who had always been cold, now had ammunition. She used it with the precision of someone who had been waiting. "You're late again," she said one morning, though Adaz was on time. "Not that it matters much. We don't really have a spot for you today. We're running a tighter set." She said it loudly. The room was full. Another morning. "Can someone move that rack? Adaz needs more space to—" She gestured vaguely at Adazi's body. "Exist." Laughter. Always laughter, if Vivian said it with the right face. And one afternoon, when Adaz arrived for a fitting, and the assigned outfit was visibly 2 sizes too small. "Oh, we didn't update your measurements. We didn't think we'd need to." Adaz said nothing. She had learned that saying nothing was the only thing that didn't feed it. Sloane was worse, not because she was louder than Vivian. She wasn't, but because of what she had been. Sloane no longer sat beside her. Sloane no longer found her after bad days with iced coffee and whispered solidarity. Sloane was now on the other side of the room, queen of her own court, and she addressed Adaz the way royalty addressed inconveniences, briefly, clearly, without mercy. It was Sloane who said, one afternoon in the fitting room, when Adaz was struggling with a zip, "This is a model house, Ada, not a gym. Are you just going to keep being like this?" A pause, then, tilting her head with practiced sympathy. "Your parents, God rest them, they gave up so much for this dream. Is this really how you want to honor that?" The room went very quiet. Adazi's hand stopped on the zip. She did not cry. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of this. In the corner of the room, a junior model named Temi, 19 years old, 3 weeks in the house, still learning the politics, went absolutely still. She looked at Sloane's face, and then at Adaise's back, and something moved in her expression. Disgust, maybe, or recognition. She said nothing, but she did not laugh. She filed it away. No one asked Adaise how she was. That was the thing she kept returning to, in the apartment at night, the silence pressing in around her. 2 months. She had lost everything in 2 months. Her parents, her shape, her position, and not one person in that building, not one, had looked her in the eye and asked, "How are you doing?" She thought about her father watching that campaign video 17 times. She thought about her mother's gown tilting to one side. She did not know how to carry it. She did not know how to put it down. The office of Bayek Ryan occupied the entire top floor of the Bayek Group Tower in Gangnam, and from the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul spread out below like a circuit board at night, luminous, intricate, endlessly in motion. Bayek Ryan was 38 years old and had been told more times than he could count that he did not look it. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that came not from vanity, but from discipline. Broad shoulders, wide chest, the body of a man who worked himself the way he worked everything, completely, consistently, without apology. His hair was his most discussed feature in every room he entered. Gold, worn long enough to be styled back from his face, falling with the effortless ease of someone who had long made peace with being looked at. He had tattoos. His arms, visible below the rolled sleeves of his shirt, were a landscape of ink, abstract geometries, a phrase in Hangul along his inner forearm, and on the left, a branch of winter bare trees with no leaves. On his neck, just below his left ear, was the one that people always noticed first and asked about last. A heart, cracked down the center, clean, precise lines. He was on a video call with his aunt. "I'm not coming to New York, Gomo," he said, with the calm that had replaced argument somewhere in his mid-30s. He called her Gomo, father's sister, even though she was technically his mother's. He'd done it since he was 7, and no one had corrected him. Isol Bayek appeared on his screen looking immaculate, as she always did. She was 60, silver-haired, and possessed a quality of stillness that Ryan had always associated with people who had survived interesting things. "The Yoon family is coming to the debut. Sunja's daughter, Cheol. You've met her twice and been rude both times. You owe them a proper evening." "I wasn't rude. I was quiet." "To you, those are different things. To them, they aren't." He said nothing. Outside his window, Seoul glittered. "I have a company to run." "You have a private jet and 4 executives who have been running that company quite well during your absences for years." He almost smiled. "You missed my birthday," Isul said, shifting tactics with the fluency of long practice. 5 years in a row. "You told me you didn't want to fuss." "I told you I didn't want to fuss. I did not tell you to disappear from my life entirely. Or don't you care about your mother's only sister?" There it was. The particular guilt she deployed like a precision instrument, aimed at the exact crease where his armor didn't quite meet. He exhaled. "Fine, I'll come." "Good. And Ryan, the matchmaking won't work." "I don't know what you mean." "You always know what I mean, Gomo." A pause, then, lightly, "Just come. And maybe, for once in your life, try to be present." He ended the call and looked at his reflection in the dark glass of the window. The cracked heart on his neck caught the light. He pressed 2 fingers against it, briefly, the way he sometimes did without meaning to. Then he picked up his phone and told his assistant to book the flight. New York. 2 days before the debut. Vivian was in the middle of informing Adaise, with the particular relish she reserved for bad news, that her practice slot had been moved again, to the auxiliary room, the one with the cracked mirror and the sound system that cut out every few minutes when the door at the far end of the corridor opened. Madame Isul walked in. The room changed. It always did when Isul entered, not dramatically, not because anyone flinched, but because she had the kind of presence that adjusted the atmosphere of a space the way weather did. Everything became slightly more itself. She stopped when she saw them. She looked at Vivian, then at Adaise, then back at Vivian, with an expression that could not be called anything except cold. Vivian. One word. Vivian's mouth closed. Isul looked at Adaise. Something shifted in her expression, not quite softness, but the controlled version of it. "I haven't seen my 2-year star on a main stage in some time. Why's that?" Adaz opened her mouth. Vivian moved. She's been struggling to meet. Shut up, Vivian. I wasn't talking to you. Complete silence. Then, addressing the rest of the room. My nephew, Beck Ryan, is gracing the debut this week. This show is global and particularly important to me. Every buyer, every editorial director, every designer with a season to plan will have eyes on my stage. I need every walk perfected, every presentation immaculate, waists trimmed down, chins up. This is not a rehearsal. She looked back at Adais. Come to my office. The office was quiet. Louis Isel sat behind her desk and folded her hands and looked at Adais with the expression of someone who had made difficult decisions for 40 years and had not yet found a way to make them feel easy. Adais told her everything. The accident, Lagos. Coming back to find the locks had been changed on everything she thought was hers. Isul listened without expression. When Adais finished, the silence stretched. I'm deeply sorry about your parents, she said finally. I mean that. A pause. And I have to be honest with you about something else. Her eyes didn't move from Adai's face. You have not been your best self, from the reports I've been getting, not for this industry. I can see what happened to you and I understand it, but I run a business, Adais, and a business cannot run on grief. I'm working on it. I've been running every morning. I am going to let you walk the debut. Adais went still. It will be your last walk if you cannot move this audience. If you walk that stage and you pull the room the way I know you are capable of pulling a room, you have a future here. If you don't, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. This is my gift to you, one last stage. What you do on it is yours. A pause. I'm truly sorry about your loss. I wish I could do more. She nodded once toward the door. You may go. She stepped into the corridor and let the door close behind her, and the tears she had refused to shed in that office, finally began. She made it outside. That was the only goal. Don't cry in the building. Don't give Vivian something to see. Ye don't crack until you're on the street. And she made it, barely, the glass doors sliding shut behind her and the November air hitting her face like a correction. She was crying before she reached the curb, not quietly, the kind of crying that had been compressed into a dense, pressurized thing for a while and was now expanding without her permission, her shoulders shaking, her vision gone, her feet moving without direction. She did not see the car. The black Mercedes came around the corner at a speed that was entirely legal and yet seemed catastrophically fast from the position of a woman walking into traffic without looking. The horn was immediate and sharp. Adais stopped. Time did something strange. She stood there, 2 feet from the front of the car, headlights on her face. And for one suspended moment she was not on a street in New York. She was on Victoria Island. She was hearing her aunt's voice. She was hearing the word accident in the way that word sounded when it meant the end of everything. She could not move. The driver leaned on the horn again, longer this time, one hand already out the window, and from the back seat came a voice, low and immediate, Junho, stop. The horn cut off. The back door opened. Beck Ryan stepped out of the car. He had been in New York for approximately 2 hours. He had slept on the flight, changed in the car, and had been mentally rehearsing how to survive dinner with the Yoon family when this happened. A woman standing in the middle of the road, lit by his headlights, tears streaming, frozen. He crossed to her quickly. Are you hurt? Adais looked at him. She registered. Tall, broad gold hair swept back from his face, a long, dark coat, and eyes that were focused on her, only on her, with a quality of attention she hadn't been on the receiving end of in long enough that she'd forgotten what it felt like. She registered the tattoo on his neck, a cracked heart. She didn't know why she noticed it in that particular moment. She filed it away somewhere without meaning to. I'm sorry, she said, which was not an answer to his question. Are you hurt? He repeated, not a question now but a check, and he was already guiding her out of the road toward the seating area in front of the building. She let him. She was still not entirely present. He crouched in front of her and looked at her face with the direct seriousness of someone who was not going to pretend this was a normal interaction. Hey, you're okay. That was my driver's fault. You're okay. She shook her head, then nodded, then shook her head again. There was a car. I know. Breathe. She breathed. Something in his stillness helped. He didn't move. He didn't rush her. He waited, with the patience of someone who had learned that some moments could not be hurried through. After a long while, very quietly, she said, "I nearly had a car accident. Again." He went very still. "Again?" She looked at her hands. Sorry, not me. My parents died in a car accident some months ago. This just reminded me of..." He said nothing. He understood now. The frozen stillness, the eyes that had gone somewhere else, the trembling that wasn't from cold. Not shock. PTSD, muscle memory of the worst kind. He stayed where he was. "You're okay," he said again. "You're here. It's over. You're here." She looked up at him, this stranger with the golden hair and the cracked heart on his neck, and something in her face loosened fractionally, the way a fist opens after holding something too long. "I'm sorry I should go," she said. "You don't have to." "No, I do. It's been a long day, and I'm probably going to lose my job. I don't even know why I'm telling you this." He didn't move. "Why?" he asked. "Well, because I'm too fat," she said, looking at herself with some kind of disgust. "My last show is coming soon. My madame told me that if I can't pull the crowd..." She stopped, laughed briefly and without humor. "I've wanted to model since I was 10 years old. My parents made sure I got here. And now I'm going to lose it because I spent 2 months burying them in my body." She looked down at herself with an expression he couldn't quite name. He looked at her again. He thought, where exactly is the problem here? He looked at this woman, the angles of her face, the lines of her, the particular way she occupied space even sitting still, and genuinely could not locate what she was describing. She caught him looking. She laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, and said, I know what you're thinking. But yes, I'm too fat for this industry." "I was thinking you seemed perfectly fine to me," he said, which was, he understood, an understatement. "You don't know this industry." "No." A pause. "When's the show?" "Thursday." Something shifted in his expression, a quiet recognition. Thursday, his aunt's debut. But he looked at the building behind her, the smoked glass, the white marble, the Maison Isole logo above the door. He looked back at her. "Well, with the way you walked into my car," he said, "you'll do great." She stared at him for one moment. Then she laughed. It was, he thought, watching it happen, the kind of laugh that had been buried under something heavy for a long time. It came out raw and surprised and real, and it rearranged her entire face, and something in his chest moved in a way it hadn't moved in a very long time. And then her face changed. She sat up straight, looked at her phone. The time. "I have to go. I've been sitting here and I have 2 days to..." She was already standing. "Let me take you." She looked at the Mercedes. She looked at the driver. She looked back at Ryan. "Well, no way that driver's driving me anywhere." A pause. Then, "Thank you. I'm sorry about everything." And she was gone, moving down the street with the energy of someone who had just remembered something urgent. He watched her until she turned the corner and disappeared. He stood there a moment longer. Then he got back in the car. "You can drive," he said. He said nothing else, but for some reason he was thinking about Thursday. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't put prices on the menu. Isole had chosen it to be romantic adjacent without being embarrassing. Good light, quiet music, food that required attention. The Yoon family arrived first. Sunja Yoon, immaculate in a structured ivory jacket, and her daughter Chaeul, who was, by any objective measure, beautiful. Chaeul Yoon was 26, quiet-mannered, you with dark eyes and the composed bearing of someone who had been raised with the expectation of significant rooms. She was not loud about her intelligence. She was not loud about anything. Ryan arrived exactly on time, greeted everyone with calibrated politeness, and sat down. The dinner was, by external metrics, proceeding well. The food was excellent. Sunja and Isole were animatedly recounting a memory from the 90s. Chaeul was asking Ryan an informed question about his logistics operation, a real question, and he was answering it. But he was not present. Not really. He was thinking about a woman on a street corner, laughing with her whole face. He was thinking about, "I have wanted to model since I was 10 years old." He was thinking about the way she had looked at herself, that expression he still couldn't name, and the way it had been replaced briefly by that laugh. He refocused, answered a question he hadn't fully heard, reached for his water glass. Chaeul was watching him. She had been watching him with the quiet acuity she applied to most things for the better part of the meal. She watched him answer questions from somewhere behind his eyes. She watched him glance at the window. She watched him press 2 fingers, briefly, to the tattoo on his neck. She said quietly, "Whatever you're thinking about, it must be important." The table went slightly still. Ryan looked at her properly for the first time all evening, and found her regarding him with something like understanding. Not hurt, not accusation, just clarity. He held her gaze. "I apologize," he said, and he meant it. "This is unfair to you." Cheol gave him the smallest of nods. "Don't apologize. I understand, but I don't think they would," she said, gesturing to her mother and his aunt. Sunja and Isul had noticed none of this. Ryan set his napkin on the table. "Please forgive me. I have a call I cannot move." He kissed his aunt's cheek. He bowed to Sunja. He inclined his head to Cheol with something more than courtesy. He left Thursday, 4 hours before the show. The dressing room was a controlled chaos of beauty. Racks organized by look number, stylists moving with the focused precision of surgeons, the layered perfume of 16 different products, the sound of blow dryers in someone's pre-show playlist. Every model had a station. The order of the stations was not random. Sloane's was at the center, directly beneath the main light, surrounded by the senior stylists. She moved through the space with the ease of someone who had been told, implicitly and explicitly, that she was the main event. The final debut walk, the closing look, the one every designer fought to secure, was hers. Vivian had confirmed it the day before. Adezi's station was near the door. Her assigned stylist was a young Filipina woman named Marielle, 22, first season, quiet and steady and fundamentally decent in a way the industry hadn't yet corrected. Marielle was holding up the assigned look, a structured column dress in deep burgundy, and working through the math of it with calm practicality. "It'll fit," she said. "It's an 8. It should fit," Adez said. "I let the seams out this morning." "It'll fit." Adez looked at her. Marielle looked back with the steady expression of someone who had decided privately to be in someone's corner. "You're walking in 2 hours. We'll make it fit just right, I promise." Adez was about to respond when she felt it, the particular charge in the air that meant Sloane was moving through the room with intention. Sloane stopped beside her. She looked at the dress. She looked at Adez. She smiled. "You still can't fit into an 8? Adez said nothing. "I'm just saying. It's not a personal thing. But this is a show, not a gym." And at a certain point, a pause, her voice dropping to something that might have been mistaken for concern. "I mean, I really pity your parents. I pity them for what they gave up. If you can't even maintain your shape." The room went quiet in that particular way. Aureadezi's hands stopped moving. "Ignore her, she's not worth it," Marielle said quietly, and continued while they struggled with the dress. "Take your stomach in a bit, it's about to fit fully," she whispered in a way that she ensured nobody heard her. But of course, Sloane did. Sloane raised her voice, just slightly, performing for the room. "Yes, Adezi, take that stomach in. Let the clothes actually fit for once." It landed. The room cracked. Not everyone, not Marielle, who went very still, and not Temmie in the corner, who looked at Sloane's face and quietly looked away. But enough. Enough to fill the space. Adez stood in the center of it. Marielle stepped closer this time. Quieter. She leaned close and said to Adez, Don't give them what they want." A breath. "Chin up, waist snatched, walk gorgeous. Today is a big day." "The dress fits." Adez looked at herself in the mirror. She breathed. She put her shoulders back. The venue was full. 300 guests, buyers, editors, designers, journalists, and a sizable contingent of people who were simply there because Maison Isol's debuts were events in the cultural calendar, not just the fashion one. The light was warm and directional. The music was live. A violinist, a cellist, and a percussionist whose work was understated and hypnotic. Isol sat in the front row, center, with the absolute stillness of a woman who had built this and knew its every frequency. Beside her, in the seat she had reserved, Ryan sat down 7 minutes before the show began. She glanced at him. He was already watching the stage. The show opened. The room was responding well, applause measured and appreciative. There was the ambient energy of a crowd getting what it came for. Sloane had walked first. She looked beside Isul and saw him, the billionaire that was going to be hers. She had made extensive research on him, and she wanted him for herself. She walked beautifully. Beautifully as she always did. Precise, perfectly composed, every angle deliberate. She was sure she would impress Ryan in her final debut. The room had responded. Ryan had watched her and thought about something else. Then the music shifted. The lights reconfigured, and when Adaze stepped out, Ryan sat up. She was wearing the burgundy column dress, hair up, neck bare, and she was, he thought, extraordinary. The word arrived without announcement. She moved the way very few people moved, with the full weight of herself, taking up the space she occupied without apology or performance. But her face. He watched her face, and he saw it. The thing underneath the composure, the noise she was trying to walk through, the voices she was fighting, everything that had been said this morning, and the morning before, and every morning since she came back from Lagos, the 2 months, the weight of it. She was mid-runway when it happened. Her heel caught, a fraction of a second, a shift of weight that should have been recoverable. But she was not fully in her body tonight, and the margin that would have saved her wasn't there. She went down. The room made a sound. Isul's expression did not change, but something moved in it. Disappointment, yes, and something that might have been pain. Ryan was already standing. "Ryan!" Isul reached for his arm. Bound he was already moving. He crossed the front of the room and stepped onto the stage, and reached Adaze in a handful of seconds that seemed, to everyone watching, to happen in slow motion. He took her arm. He helped her up, with a directness and a gentleness that somehow managed to be both at once. He looked at her face and said, very quietly, "I've got you." She stood. She was shaking. She looked at him, and for 1 second she looked terrified. "Walk with me," he said, and offered his arm. She looked at it. She took it. They walked the last 10 feet of the runway together, a tattooed billionaire in a dark suit and a woman in burgundy silk, and then turned and faced the room. The applause started with Isul. She began it alone, slowly, and then the room caught it, and then the room was on its feet, and the room was loud. And Ryan, with a single step back with one small gesture, directed all of it toward her, toward Adaze. She stood in the light. She let herself be seen. In the wings, Sloane watched. Her jaw was tight. Her closing walk was in 4 minutes. He was not in his seat when she walked. They were outside the building. She wasn't entirely sure how. The crowd, the noise, his hand at the small of her back steering her through the current of it. But they were outside, and it was cold, and she was breathing. "You're Madame Isul's nephew," she said. "Yes." "You knew, the last time we met. You already knew who I worked for. I figured it out." She stared at him. "And you didn't say anything because you only really needed to talk." She looked at him for a long moment, inside the building, through the glass doors. She could see the after-show milling. Sloane stood very still in shock, looking at them, and beside Sloane, Vivian, with an expression doing its best to be neutral. "Are you spying on my nephew?" The voice came from behind them, sharp, carrying, unmistakable. Isul stood at the building's entrance, regarding Sloane and Vivian with the expression she reserved for things beneath her. "Leave here, immediately." They left. Isul walked toward Ryan and Adaze. She looked at her nephew. She looked at Adaze. She looked back at Ryan. "I need to speak to you," she said to Ryan, gesturing that it needed to be private. "Do you know her?" she asked him. "Yes, she walked into my car." Isul's eyes moved from him to Adaze. "Ryan, I brought you here to meet Cheol-Yoon. I know. Cheol is Sunja's daughter." "Sunja is my oldest friend. Your mother would never." "I'm not a child, Gomo. I'm not saying how I feel," he said clearly and without aggression, "and whether I feel anything is not anyone's business. That is, if I even feel anything. Please don't make a big deal out of this." He looked at Adaze. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I said I'd take her home." Isul stood very still. Something was working through her expression, a mix of anger and frustration. Adaze looked at Ryan. He had his hand slightly extended, not demanding, just offered, and he was looking at her with a steadiness she had not encountered in so long she'd forgotten the word for it. Steady. That was it. Completely, utterly steady. He walked her to the car and opened the door. She looked at the front seat, then at him. "Are you driving?" He moved to the driver's side. "Well, you said you wouldn't get in if my driver was driving." He looked at her over the roof of the car. "You said nothing about if I was." She stood there. The city moved around them, indifferent and endless. She got in the car. Later that night, Vivek Ryan's hotel suite. The city spread below him, all light and motion, the kind of view that reminded you how many lives were running simultaneously, how unlikely it was for any two particular people to find themselves in the same moment. His flight to Seoul was in 2 days. His assistant had already confirmed the calendar. 4 meetings, 2 dinners, a board review. The Jeju logistics deal, 3 months in the making, requiring his physical presence, scheduled for day 3. He thought about the way she had laughed. He thought about everything she said to him, about the drive home. No, he couldn't possibly be falling for her. He thought about the cracked heart on his neck, about the woman who had put it there, about the 8 years he had spent making sure no one else got close enough to leave a mark. He thought about Adaize, standing in the light of that runway, shaking and standing and letting herself be seen. He picked up his phone. He called his assistant. Push Seoul. A pause. Sir, the Jeju deal. 2 weeks. Push everything 2 weeks. Another pause. Understood. He ended the call. He sat for a long time in the quiet of the room. He pressed 2 fingers to the cracked heart on his neck, the old habit, the reflex he'd never managed to stop. And for the first time, the gesture felt different, less like a reminder, more like a question. He kept it. So, besties, tell me, is this the beginning of the love story between Adaize and Ryan? If it is, it'll definitely not be an easy love story, because you know evil's lurking. If you want to get our ebook, click the link in the description below and join the waitlist. Also, if you enjoyed the story so far, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because this story is just getting started. Also, tell me, do you want a final part for this incredible story? And tell me your thoughts for the story. What do you think would happen next? We love to read every of your comments.